WXLQ Bristol, and WXLJ Whitehall, Glens Falls. It's 8 o'clock.
Good morning. This is Monday. This is Northern Light for Monday, June 3rd. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe.
After former President Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 counts in his hush money trial, Congresswoman Elise Stefanik's office released a statement, then an updated one.
Take it from my phone call to you. It is not Elise Stefanik's statement. It was sent out in error by a staff member.
This is the last week of the state legislative session. Lawmakers are disagreeing over some of the remaining bills, including one on combating climate change and another on tackling addictive algorithms on kids' social media feeds.
Also, we'll head into a boggy wetland at the Paul Smith College Vic to talk with Charlie Rhinestern, founder of the Northern Peatlands Project.
We're standing here in a swarm of black flies, and somehow I'm still excited to be out in the wetlands exploring these places. It just feels like this type of place where you can never know everything there is to know about them.
All that's coming up on Northern Light. Stick with us.
Northern Light is supported by Seagull Festival in Schroon Lake, presenting their 109th season of opera and musical theater this summer. Production details and tickets at seagullfestival.org, and by Apothecary Chocolates, making gourmet chocolates by hand from all natural herbs, botanicals, and tree syrups. apothecarychocolates.com.
This is Northern Light. I'm Monica Sandreski.
And I'm Todd Moe. After former President Donald Trump was found guilty on all 34 charges, North Country Congresswoman Elise Stefanik issued a statement echoing Trump's claim that the trial was corrupt. Shortly after, she issued an updated statement with even harsher criticisms. Emily Russell reports.
Stefanik's first statement about Trump's guilty verdict was really critical. She described the American justice system as, quote, corrupt and rigged. But less than 20 minutes later, she doubled down. In an updated statement, she described it as the, quote, weaponized justice system that is, quote, un-American. Side by side, you can see the language that was edited from the first statement to the updated one. For example, when Stefanik described the judge who presided over Trump's case, in the first statement, she called him, quote, conflicted. In the second one, that's changed to, quote, unethical. Stefanik also added new language describing the judge as a, quote, corrupt Democrat. There's no evidence to support her claims. When asked for comment about the changes, Elise Stefanik's senior advisor Alex DeGrasse called NCPR and said this about the original statement.
It's retracted. Take it from my phone call to you. It is not Elise Stefanik's statement. It was sent out in error by a staff member.
But there was no retraction issued until after NCPR asked for comment. Throughout the updated statement, Stefanik amplified the claim that the case against Trump was brought illegally and that the gag order on him during the trial was, quote, clearly unconstitutional. Neither of those claims were included in her first statement. There is no evidence that the trial was illegal or the judge's actions were unconstitutional. The trial was a standard legal process with the outcome determined by a jury of 12 New Yorkers. Both versions of Stefanik's statement on his conviction describe her as a, quote, key ally to President Trump during this sham Biden trial. Stefanik has been a loyal, outspoken advocate of Trump's since the lead up to his first impeachment in 2019. She's considered to be on the short list for Trump's vice presidential pick. Emily Russell, North Country Public Radio.
A public hearing about the siting of a new Border Patrol facility in the Thousand Islands has been set for June 25th and 26th. Both sessions will be at the Ciro Recreation Park Arena in Clayton. One of the proposed sites is Blind Bay, located between Alexandria Bay and Clayton. Since Blind Bay was proposed in 2022, local groups and state officials from both sides of the aisle have lobbied against the site. Environmentalists say the bay is an environmental treasure and too shallow for good boat access. Originally, U.S. Customs and Border Protection had allowed for public comment until May 20th. New York Senator Chuck Schumer pushed for a public hearing and an extended comment period.
The developers behind the Oval Wood Dish Housing Project in Tupper Lake say they plan to break ground on the project this summer. Amy Feiereisel has more.
Plans to turn the abandoned 9-building Oval Wood Dish Factory into an affordable housing complex have been in the works for years. Syracuse developer LaHinch Group bought the vacant factory in 2021 and announced 3 projects, 2 apartment complexes with commercial space and a potential hotel on the land across the street. Joe Gem from the LaHinch Group says the apartments would be for people who make between $35,000 and $70,000 per year. He told the Adirondack Daily Enterprise the apartments are for local workers and would support local businesses who struggle to hire staff because they have nowhere to live. The project has accumulated about $7.5 million from state grants since 2021 and was approved for a significant state tax credit last year. It did not receive community support for a local tax break, which the developers blamed on misconceptions about the project being, quote, low-income housing, end quote. Gem says they want to break ground on the Oval Wood Dish development this summer and are currently looking to hire a local construction manager. Amy Feiereisel, North Country Public Radio.
You're listening to Northern Light here on North Country Public Radio. It's 7 minutes past 8. Good morning. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. Coming up, swamps, bogs, and peatlands are soggy and buggy, but also important ecosystems. We'll talk with Charlie Reinertsen, founder of the Northern Peatlands Project, in just a few minutes here on Northern Light.
Potsdam cellist Beth Robinson. Northern Light is supported by the Village Mercantile, Saranac Lake, partnering with local nonprofit organizations to sell their merchandise through their e-commerce store. More at villagemerc.com. And Adirondack Experience, the museum on Blue Mountain Lake, hosting a variety of creative workshops, including glass etching and paddle making. Learn more at theadkx.org.
New York's legislative session ends this Friday, but several large remaining bills may not pass. As Karen DeWitt reports, there continues to be a disconnect on issues like combating climate change and regulating kids' social media feeds.
Governor Kathy Hochul is making a push to ban tech companies from using harmful algorithms to influence children's social media feeds. She cites data that shows increased use of social media by children and teens is linked to increased rates of depression, anxiety, even suicide.
And this darkness lives on platforms like Instagram, TikTok. These are ruled by addictive algorithms designed to draw the young people deeper and deeper into that darkness over and over.
The SAFE Act for Kids would restrict companies from using the algorithms without parental consent. The Child Data Protection Act would prohibit online platforms from collecting and sharing children's personal data without consent. Hochul says they are the only bills that she's pushing for as the session ends. But Senate Leader Andrea Stork-Cousins says Hochul has not yet spoken to her about the the measures, but she says the staffs are trying to work out the details.
There are conversations. I don't want to make it sound like there are no conversations, but she has not personally reached out to me. We're continuing to do our work to try and get legislation over the finish line.
The Senate and Assembly, both led by Democrats, are not on the same page when it comes to several environmental measures. The Climate Change Superfund Act has passed in the Senate, but not the Assembly. It would require fossil fuel companies to pay for climate change mitigation. The New York Heat Act, which would end the practice of allowing utility ratepayers to subsidize the cost of new gas line hookups, was also approved in the Senate, but has stalled in the lower house. Advocates protested outside the Assembly chambers. Meanwhile, the Assembly has advanced a bill to reduce plastic packaging by 50%, while the Senate is considering weakening the measure to require a 30% reduction in packaging instead. The two houses also disagree on how to fix a legal loophole that resulted in the state's highest court overturning the rape conviction of former movie mogul Harvey Weinstein. The court ruled that the prosecutor erred when he included testimony from 3 women who also said that Weinstein sexually assaulted them because the alleged incidents were not part of the charges against Weinstein in the trial. The Senate passed a bill to allow the testimony in sexual abuse cases, but some Democrats in the Assembly objected. That led the Assembly sponsor, Amy Paulin, to warn that Weinstein, who will be retried on the charges later this year, and others like him, could go free in the future.
I was devastated because I believe that without this change, serial rapists will not be convicted in New York as easily as they should be.
Opponents, including the Legal Aid Society, say the bill as written is overly broad and could lead to more wrongful convictions. Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie says some of his Democratic members need more time to think through a fix and don't want to agree to anything that could have adverse consequences.
We're never going to apologize for being a deliberative House. And, we have 20-something lawyers in that conference, and we all want to protect sexual assault victims. But they also believe in the law and believe in the Constitution and the equal protections of the Constitution. So it's not something that they take lightly.
Even though there are few final agreements yet, deals at the Capitol often come together at the last minute. Speaker Heastie says there's still plenty of time.
We still have 5.5 more days, which in Albany time is a lifetime.
The session is scheduled to end June 7th, but lawmakers could work into the weekend if they believe they are close on major bills. In Albany, I'm Karen DeWitt for the New York Public News Network.
Police have charged the husband of a Peru woman found dead in a rental car last week with murder. State police say the body of 57-year-old Lisa Dashnaw Tyrell was found at Enterprise Rent-A-Car in Plattsburgh last Tuesday. An autopsy found she allegedly died of strangulation. Police say an investigation determined her husband, 58-year-old Scott Tyrell of Peru, was the last known operator of the vehicle. Officers encountered him on a traffic stop early Friday morning. He was taken into custody and charged with second-degree murder and concealment of a human corpse, both felonies. Tyrell was arraigned in Peru Town Court and sent to Clinton County Jail without bail.
Warren County has created a new position in its office for a pistol permit clerk. County officials told the Glens Falls Post-Star that they have a sizable backlog of hundreds of permit applications. They say it's because of an increase in applications, internal staffing shortages, and new statewide regulations that make it harder for individuals to get a pistol permit, including requiring extensive safety training and an in-person interview. Gun violence has decreased by about 35% in New York since 2021 after the implementation of statewide measures that include stricter gun laws. Some Warren County officials say the pistol permit application process has become overburdened by that regulation.
And Potsdam's town clerk has been recognized for her work at the state level. Cindy Galieber has served as the town of Potsdam's clerk for 28 years. She was awarded Town Clerk of the Year by the New York Town Clerks Association. She told WWNY-TV that she cares about the job because she cares about Potsdam.
I love what I do. If I didn't love what I do, I wouldn't be here. I mean, I'm certainly could be retired, but I'm not because the best part of my job is reaching out to the community.
Go Lieber is the first town clerk from the North Country to receive the title.
You're listening to Northern Lights right here on North Country Public Radio. I'm Todd Moe.
And I'm Monica Sandreski. In just a minute, a Saranac Lake man's mission to protect the Adirondacks peatlands. That's in just a couple of minutes. Then stick around after the show for Bird Note coming up at 8:42. We'll take a look at some of the birding murals down in New York City. That's coming up after the show. But first, Todd has a look at the weather for us.
Sunny and hot today, partly to mostly sunny and hot tomorrow, and then a chance of rain Wednesday and Thursday. The Weather Service is predicting highs today, upper 70s into the low to mid 80s. Mid 80s for places like Lake George, Glens Falls, upper 70s for some of the higher elevations of the Adirondacks and Tug Hill. Tomorrow, highs 80s across all of the region with light winds out of the west-southwest, and then about a 40% chance of scattered showers, thunderstorms Wednesday, 20% chance of rain on Thursday and Friday. Highs near 80 on Wednesday, 70s for highs on Thursday and Friday. Sunny and 65 right now here in Canson.
Charlie Reinertsen is a musician, photographer, writer, blogger, and conservationist. He's the founder of Two Line Studio, which is the home of the Northern Peatlands Project. When he's not busy managing and hosting performances at the Garagerie in Saranac Lake, a music venue, he's out exploring in the wild.
Yeah, so what is it about peatlands? They're wet, soggy, and buggy, right? But for Charlie Reinertsen, they're important ecosystems. He says these spongy riots of color and texture conceal another world beneath the surface. I joined him recently on a walk through part of the Adirondack Peatland corridor on the southern edge of the Paul Smiths College Vic. He's on a mission to promote and help conserve northern peatlands. His aerial photos of peatlands and wildlife are on display at View in Old Forge this season. Changing climate, says Reinertsen, threatens to upset the delicate balance of water and life in these green, red, and gold mossy habitats. As we walk a trail that straddles a pond on one side and a swampy area on the other, childlike curiosity allows us to ignore the swarms of blackflies, for a moment at least. Spring, says Charlie, is a chance to encounter some amazing peatland dwellers as they migrate from forest to vernal pools to mate.
I'm Charlie Reinertsen, and we're standing near the Paul Smiths Vic, and we're out in a wetland taking a look at some turtles basking on logs and taking a look at a vernal pool where salamanders were recently migrating to this location to be able to lay their eggs.
So are they in the tadpole stage right now?
At this point, they should hopefully have been moving towards becoming tadpoles, and they'll be in that aquatic stage through essentially August. I've just always been drawn to these ecosystems. We're standing here in a swarm of black flies, and somehow I'm still excited to be out in the wetlands exploring these places. I've always loved everything about turtles and frogs and snakes, and it just feels like this type of place where you can never know everything there is to know about them. There are just so many questions you can ask and so many things to explore, and I find them, despite the bugs, to be beautiful and worthy of exploring.
So are you looking at populations or habitat or climate or all those things? Or when you say you're sort of exploring and studying, is there anything in particular you're interested in? Or?
Yeah, so I started the Northern Peatlands Project as a way to raise awareness of these ecosystems that not a lot of people are spending time thinking about or studying. And we have some incredible peatland researchers in this area. And I have an environmental science background, so I knew some about this, some information about these ecosystems before starting this project. But once I started learning more, I realized how little I knew. And if with my background in science, if I know very little, just kind of playing that out to the broader public, I just started to see that there's a gap there, and I wanted to spend more time trying to draw people into these places that they might not be spending a lot of time exploring on their own.
How do you define a peatland? Because I think I know what a swamp is and a bog, but what is a peatland?
It's kind of a circular definition. Yeah. A peatland is a place where peat is formed. Uh-huh. And so they are, the big umbrella is wetland. And then within that, you have your peatlands, and those are made up of your bogs, your fens. Really, the broad topic is wetlands, and wetlands are starting to get more attention, especially from a biodiversity perspective, right. As well as from a climate solutions perspective. They're unique because they are these places where vegetation, when it dies, it just accumulates in the water column. And because it's underwater, it doesn't decompose quickly. So it forms this organic material that we call peat, this slowly decomposing substance. And that is just really carbon rich. So there's tons of carbon stored in the peat, and it can be as deep as 30 feet beneath the surface of the peatlands. So you think about burying a 3-story building underneath the peat. It gives you kind of a picture of how much carbon we're talking about here.
And it's a timeline too as you go down, right? Is that the idea?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is where there are just so many different stories that you can tell when it comes to our peatlands, because we're getting all of this rich data of what types of pollen was in the air at the last great ice age, which is when these peatlands were starting to form 10,000 years ago. So you can core through the peat and then study what pollen you might find at different levels, and the deepest level is the oldest.
As we head to the southern end of Black Pond, Reinertsen tells me the Northern Peatlands Project is a photographic journey to document peatlands in the Adirondacks. He usually packs a camera on his hikes, and he says he's driven by a desire to ignite curious minds about the wonders of the natural world. Oh, look at the size of that rock formation over there. That is incredible.
In our human history, we're kind of have a little bit of a contentious relationship with bogs. We think of them as these, they are bug-ridden wastelands that should be drained, and they don't have as much beauty. And so I feel like part of my job is to try and uncover the fact that these are just stunning places that are filled with color and really interesting plants and animals that a lot of people don't get time to spend with them. So that I feel like that's a big part of what I'm trying to do.
So do you use a drone, or how do you get some of your photos?
Yeah, so I do a combination of, my photography background is primarily on the ground. Mm-hmm. And then when I started to get into this project, I felt like I really needed to get that aerial perspective. A lot of these peatlands are surrounded by woods, and you don't want to walk on them because you're harming the ecosystem. And so the drone allows me to play with composition and get aerial perspectives. And one of my favorite ways to capture the bog is to look straight down at it from as high as I can get, and it just creates what I feel like are just paintings of all the reds and greens and oranges in the sphagnum moss.
I think that was the biggest surprise for me, was just seeing the variety of color.
Yeah, it is amazing no matter what time of year you go. Even if you're in June, in July, the sphagnum moss, depending on the species, depending on where it is, it's going to be anywhere from yellow to green to red to orange. And the colors change through the seasons, but they're always colorful. And then you have pitcher plants and all these different amazing, beautiful species that add to that mosaic.
Plants that eat animals and
yeah, absolutely. It's got it all.
Charlie Reinertsen is a musician, photographer, writer, blogger, and conservationist. He's the founder of Two Line Studio, which is the home of the Northern Peatlands Project, and we have more on our website at ncpr.org.
This is Northern Light, and you're listening right here on North Country Public Radio. It's about 8:25. I'm Monica Sandreski here with Todd Moe. And as many listeners know, this is Todd's last week before he retires on Friday. And Todd, I just want to say we are really, really going to miss you after you leave on Friday. We just so value your sense of joy and wonder and how you bring that to each story and conversation that you do. I love seeing you smiling just now, listening to Charlie talking about his joy for peatlands. And you do so much for the arts in our community and to shine a light on the voices of small arts organizations and musical groups in the North Country that may not get as much publicity and traction. And one person who I know means a lot to you wanted to share something special with you.
Todd, Dan Duggan here. Thanks so much for all your support of the arts and culture here in the North Country, especially your support for regional music and musicians. I know I speak for many of us who so appreciate all that you've done. It means the world to us. Your joy and enthusiasm for life is infectious and will be greatly missed in our mornings. I know how much you love to waltz, so I wrote a waltz for you in honor of your well-deserved retirement and aptly named it One Mo Waltz. Thanks so much again, my friend, and best of luck in your retirement.